Welcome everybody to DOULA-LA. I'm your host Tanya Malcolm. This is my virtual event in celebration of World Doula Week 2015. Thank you all for tuning in. I'm so happy to have on the Skype with me today Miss Ana Paula Markel. Welcome, Ana Paula.
Thank you.
I'm gonna let everybody know a little bit more about you, and then then we can start our fun doula conversation. Ana Paula was born and raised in Brazil and entered motherhood early at age 21. In 1999, she moved to Los Angeles, and that same year had her second daughter and second cesarean. 2 years later, she gave birth vaginally to her third daughter, and 1 year later, she had a successful 2 vaginal births after 2 cesarean births. Each of these unique, rich, and vastly different experiences taught her a great deal about the options available to women and birthing families. Ana Paula became a childbirth educator and birth doula in 2002 and is now a certified doula with DONA International, a DONA-approved birth doula trainer, and a certified childbirth educator and childbirth educator trainer through International Childbirth Education Association. Aren't we so lucky to have you? Okay, there's more. Ana Paula sits on 2 task forces at Cedars-Sinai Hospital to improve patient satisfaction and bringing her experience as a doula and birth diplomat to this great institution. Some of the accomplishments to one of this task force has been skin to skin in the OR, creating a birth plan for the hospital patients with a doula's touch, and the creation of a doula committee to address communication and quality of care. Ana Paula serves on the board of the directors for DONA International, as well as the advisory board for PAM, Pregnancy Awareness Month, and has supported both the Ina May Gaskin documentary and The Business of Being Born. In 2012, she joined the prestigious team of instructors at Bastyr University. She has also been a guest on several TV shows and birth documentaries. Ana Paula is an international speaker and travels to several conferences a year. She lives in LA with her husband and her 4 children, her mother, and their various dogs. Welcome. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me, Tanya. I am so excited to be part of this, so honored, so humble, and what a great idea. I really want to shout out to you for putting this effort and for getting us all together. This is not an easy job, but it really unites us and really connects us with other doulas celebrating this all over the world. So thank you for having me.
You're welcome. And as you say, it's World Doula Week, so I'm so happy to have you because you have that connection with Brazil, your motherland, and I'm really happy that you're with us. So I've been starting these conversations with your own journey to birth work, so maybe you can tell us a little bit about that.
Yes, absolutely. My entrance into the world of birth was accidental. I have no medical background whatsoever. My background is in fashion. I grew up in Brazil. I became pregnant young when I was only 20 years old. And at the time, I was living in England and going to school and doing internships and things like that, and really felt that I wanted to come home to have the baby in Brazil. My boyfriend at the time was also studying abroad. And even though, I come from a country that has extremely high C-section rates, I had a fantasy to give birth to a baby vaginally. I just, I don't know if it was watching the Blue Lagoon, what is it that did it to me? But I just, even though I had no reference of natural birth, because, this was before internet, I had this fantasy. I really wanted to do it. So when I came back to Brazil, my doctor was my mom's doctor, also my grandma's doctor, which is very common, very paternalistic relationship with your doctor. And he told me, yes, sure, you can try for a vaginal birth. And 2 days after my due date, he told me that it was very dangerous to stay pregnant past your due date and that I should have a cesarean. And that, also being a young woman, that it would preserve me. And you have to keep in mind, this is before internet. This is before I, didn't have any of, birth books in my hands. I really had nobody that I could go and talk to about any of this. being very young, when this guy told me, my baby could be in danger, to me, that was it. It was just like, yeah, I did have that desire, but, as a mother, I have to make a decision that puts my child first. With that said, I went to that cesarean, of course, disappointed. But that cesarean was not traumatic. The doctor was very present. He was very connected. He was very joyful in his tone of voice, and even the things that he would say to me. I remember, it's been almost 24 years, but I do remember he would say things like, "I'm making my first incision. I see very healthy tissue. I'm making the second incision. Oh my goodness, she has so much hair." So I remember laying down there thinking like, "Yeah, healthy tissue. Oh my gosh, she has hair." So definitely not ideal, but there was no trauma at the time with it. And then in my daughter and I bonded, and she breastfed really well. To this day, we are very, very close. Then when she was younger, I met my now husband, and then moved to the United States to grow a family. Became pregnant with my second daughter, and wanted to have a vaginal birth after cesarean. Coming from Brazil, the United States always had this reputation of being very progressive towards natural vaginal birth. So I really came here thinking, okay, I'm going to the land of vaginal birth. I'm going to find, this doctor that's going to help me. And sure enough, I get here and I find this OB that was my sister-in-law's OB. And he tells me, that, yeah, I could try for a vaginal birth after cesarean. And at 35 weeks, he told me that the baby wasn't growing as expected, and that I should then have another cesarean that Friday, just really not much time to think about it. And there I was, in a very similar situation. I have this dream, I have this desire to have this birth experience, but I have a medical authority telling me, this is dangerous for my baby. So I went for that second cesarean, and that cesarean felt different. It was very different than the first one. I didn't know this doctor. He didn't know me. He came in to the OR after I already had my anesthesia. He took the baby out and he left. It was very detached. It was very cold. It was very scary because I didn't know, the well-being of my baby. And it turned out that my baby was 5 pounds, 11 ounces, which for 35 weeks is very good. And that really pissed me off. That's when the activist in me was born. I really felt betrayed. I felt cheated. And yet my voice came with breastfeeding. I really used that energy to advocate for breastfeeding, and I spoke loud, and I wasn't polite to people, and I demand that my baby came to me, or I came to my baby, and she came on my breast, and she latched on, and she nursed amazingly well and came home with me. So that was my first lesson of, look what happens when you allow other people to speak for you, and look what happens when you speak for yourself. It was a very empowering experience, even though sad. I did learn, and I did felt completely transformed by that experience in just, when everybody else was telling me what to do, nothing worked. When I took the lead, it worked. So then when I was pregnant with my third, I was convinced that I was gonna at least have a fair chance. I have common sense, and I understand that if there was a real reason, but I really wanted a fair chance. So in this process, I met with nurse midwives, and at the time with the VBAC laws up and down, I found an obstetrician that was totally willing to, allow me to have a try off labor. And that process in itself was so awesome, because that was my first time taking childbirth education classes. I was pregnant with my third child, like in my 30s, a very educated woman, like going for my first childbirth education class. And I fell in love. I fell in love with the teacher. I fell in love with the other couples. I fell in love with my body. I became that crazy person that would go to the grocery store and see a pregnant woman and go to her and say, you know, you have a cervix, and you know what it does? It sticks out and then it opens and your baby just comes right down. It's just incredible. I felt like I was going from Middle Ages to Renaissance. You know, it was so awesome. And I hired a doula. I had a doctor that, you know, was such a friend. You know, he was a partner who really took into consideration what I thought, or my needs, or my opinion, or my feelings. And it was just a completely different experience. So even before the birth, I already felt transformed by the experience. And, you know, and we all know sometimes cesareans are needed. You know, it's not about, you know, it's a vaginal birth or it's a cesarean birth, but what's that process like for that woman? How did she get to that outcome? That's what makes a difference for her. And yet, you know, I wanted this vaginal birth. So I did have my vaginal birth. I went to 42 weeks and 5 days. So it was crazy because,
Wow.
you know, an induction was not an option. So it was either go into labor or have another cesarean. And, you know, I was going for a lot of non-stress tests, and my baby was totally fine, placenta fine, amniotic fluid fine. So we just kept going, 2 more days, 1 more day, 2 more days, and we made it. Labor was long. It was painful. It was, I remember many times in my labor thinking, I can't believe I wanted this, you know, like, so like, what was I thinking?
Yeah. Yeah.
But yet, I needed that long labor. There were so many things about my life that became clear to me in my long labor. There were a lot of emotional issues to be resolved. There were a lot of physical issues to be resolved. There were a lot of relationship issues to be resolved. And we resolved it all. My baby, my husband, my doula, my doctor, you know, it was so beautiful. I did have an epidural, which was also so humbling because I really did not want one. And yet, you know, I got to that point of labor on hour 30 something at 6 centimeters and not going anywhere. And it was really the only last thing to try. And then I was one of those women that, you know, in 15 minutes after an epidural goes from 6 to 9. Because I am a control freak. And I just, you know, could not let go. I wanted to micromanage my labor. So that was a huge lesson as a person as well. And then with my fourth, by God, I had my natural vaginal birth. And it was awesome. It was really awesome. It was again long. I also went to 42 weeks and 3 days. I was totally a wimp. I whined through, you know, like 20 something hours of it. And then I had that moment of, you know, okay, are you going to whine or are you going to put your big girl panties on and do it, you know? And then I did it. And it was so empowering, and I was so loud, and it felt so good. And, you know, and feeling that rim of fire and this 9-pound boy coming out of me, it was just so awesome. And yet, you know, I don't love my kids any different because of
I know.
They all breastfed for the same amount of time. They all have good IQs, you know. But you know, we do, as a woman, felt very big difference. So so that's a very long answer to your question.
That's great, because we get birth stories out of it. So keep it coming.
Yeah, and you know, so I started teaching childbirth education classes first because that was, you know, I had at the time, after my first vaginal birth, I started to assist my teacher, and could not get away from it, or her. And, you know, and that just led to the couples in the classes that we were assisting to ask me if I would just come and help. She used to teach a class in a clinic for low-income families, and a lot of them did not speak very good English. So a lot of times I would come as a translator. You know, you speak a little Spanish, you speak Portuguese, you're coming. And that was really great. But that also showed me the brokenness of the system, to see how messed up it would be for, a young single mom in, that is in the system for financial support, or how she was treated so different from somebody that, was either from a different color or had a different financial status. So it was a very beautiful awakening, but a very harsh awakening at the same time. And again, I realized that, being a doula is also being an activist. It's really, you can't really separate those two things. When you see one woman in a vulnerable state being treated unfairly, you either leave, you can never do that again, or you become an activist.
Everybody said that. Everybody, if there's going to be a theme for this DOULA-LA that I didn't realize was going to become a theme, but that doulas are activists,
Yeah.
And it's not like I don't know that, but all of you are saying that.
Yeah. I think the tricky thing is to organize the activism and channel it through the right sources. To me, it's all about efficient activism, and sometimes that means I have to swallow my pride, or I have to swallow that impulse to tell somebody to, bug off, or and that is a challenge at times, but when it just, listening to you read my bio, I feel like there are many things in my career that I feel very happy about, but I am very passionate about hospital birth because, I love home birth, but the women that are searching for home birth, they have the support they need from the midwives, from, the care provider that they choose for that. The home birth community is a very strong, united community. The women that go to the hospital don't have that. They hire a doctor and then they are thrown in there. So and that's the majority of the women. And that was my story. I come from mainstream, and so I am more passionate about the mainstream women that are going to the hospital and what are they going to find in there. So, living days that we have hospitals welcoming doulas and wanting doulas' opinions and hiring doulas, or it's a dream come true.
Yeah. I know, and it's growing and starting, and doulas, we're doing such a good job. Keep up the good work. That's what I want to say. It's like, keep going, keep working, because we're going to see a shift, where it's the system isn't broken anymore. I'm going to see that with my own eyes. Like, that is like, I'm going to see a shift, and it's already starting.
Yes,
right?
Absolutely. Yes, this is for our generation.
Yeah. That's so cool.
I do believe, it's a doula phenomenon, and I do feel like we are part of something really special. I think that most of us, all the women that are part of this group, like, we have seen this shift from, how bad it was. And it's not perfect. We have a lot of work ahead of us, but the door is open, and it wasn't opened by us. There were the pioneers that came before us, and I think that's such an important piece to it, is to have respect and reverence for, the Ina May Gaskins and the Michelle O'Dunn's and Penny Simpkins that really took this information and spread. It's just these seeds of empowerment and love that just, took all over the world. So it's so beautiful.
Yes. And I'm going to shout out to Shafia Monroe, who's going to be guest hosting this week, and all the granny midwives from the South, and all the ancestral wisdom from Mother Africa as well coming through, because sometimes our stories get lost, and we're a big part of that shift as well.
Absolutely. I mean, that's where the source, right? That's the source of the wisdom. And how can we lose that? How can we not honor that? How can we not respect and appreciate? So I completely agree.
Yes, thank you. So I want to move on to some. I'm just so happy that you're here, and you're so bright and intelligent, and you have so much wisdom. So I'm gonna start quizzing you now to share some of that. Well, not quizzing you, just asking you fun questions to answer.
Fire up.
Yeah, so let's talk about being in the birth room. And is there a time for you that sticks out, where you really learn something big, like a big shift happened, or a time that you really connect with that? Like you were saying earlier, something special about being a doula and, standing in that name and what it meant to you?
Yes. To me, it's when working with first-time moms, witnessing the mother being born or the woman being born. I have seen girls become women in front of me. And that is, just thinking about it makes me emotional. It's sometimes we go into it a little whiny. This is not fun. It's not what I thought it was going to be. It's so long. How long it's going to be? And I was that person too, but watching women go through that, and then for them to get to that place of not only accepting their labor, making friends with their labor, but finding strength and power to shine through. There is no price to that, and the strength that women carry and the wisdom, the ancestors' wisdom. And I think that's probably what it is. It's just us tapping to the women that came before us, and and finding that source of womanhood that holds this planet together and that heals this planet, and finding power and strength to do that work. It may seem so romantic and so utopic at the same time, but it's very practical. It's very practical. That woman finding all of that, it will really show in her mothering, it will show in her role as a partner, it will show in her career, it will show in her sexual health. So that's my favorite moment, is when they shut down their neocortex and they just throw themselves in labor, and they just say bad words, and they don't care who is in the room, or they send people out, or they call people in, when they stop being polite to me. Those are my favorite moments, just like that to me that's a birth. That's a birth that happens before the baby coming out. Sadly, that doesn't happen in every birth. I have to say that it really doesn't. Sometimes women are a little scared of that power, or they don't even know they have it, or they don't believe you when you tell them that they do have it, and that's heartbreaking. Sometimes it takes more than one child. Sometimes on the first baby she goes halfway through her journey, and then with another baby through, or maybe through a different experience in her life, maybe going through other difficult moments that transform, somebody dying or a big challenge moving. They may find power and strength through other things, but birth is quite special, and it is that opportunity to grow into your womanhood, and I really don't want women that had cesareans or medicated births to feel like that's not for them too. I feel like you can feel this process and this power in all birth settings. You really can. It has a lot to do with all the things we talked about, is being heard, being validated, speaking up, speaking out, just matter, just showing up and looking like you matter.
Yeah. That's so good.
Yeah, I love that. And I do have so many stories about women doing things like that. Just watching them, just watching them come to that place. It's just really, really special.
Yeah. And I think every doula on the phone or on the watching, I'm usually doing telephone interviews, so this is new. All the doulas are watching, you know what she's talking about, and that little magic happens, the miracle when mom comes through, And I was just the other day speaking with one of my best friends who's having a baby, and she said, And I said, you just have to remember that they call it giving birth for a reason, because you have to give, 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 and keep on giving,
Yeah,
you know?
absolutely. It's the beginning of the rest of your
Yeah,
life.
yeah, that too. Yeah, nice.
Absolutely.
So, can we talk about some like words of wisdom and practical advice for some of the doulas that are watching? Because I think it's just really important. Like what I've been saying, like the women that I chose or who were suggested to me you're our mentors, you know, and so we really look up to that. And any chance we can have to gain some wisdom from you, we gladly accept with gratitude. So yeah, you know, I know we have all sorts of birth professionals on the line, but it is World Doula Week. So, to some of the newer doulas, is there information or wisdom that you have that you maybe wish you knew early in your doula work?
Yes, absolutely. Some that I wish that I knew, and some that I was blessed enough to have mentors that told me from the beginning. So, number one is to have mentors. You know, to have people that you can go for questions, but for hugs, for support, for Kleenex, and also, I do believe the relationship in between mentor mentoree has to be two ways. One, it's an organic relationship. You know, you don't sign up for a program to find a mentor. It has to be eye to eye, and has to be a jive, and that you have a mentor in that person because you admire her and you have aspirations and she inspires you, but also that you also learn from the people you're mentoring. I do feel very humbly that I gave contributions to the mentors that I've had, because there's something about curiosity or new energy. It really helps you to tap with that fire that got you into that place. And now having people around me that I mentor, they teach me just as much. Because they have different perspectives. They sometimes are younger than me, or have different styles in doing things. So that would be important. So that's number one. And then I would say, your family always comes first, your personal relationships, your significant others, your clients are really important and they are a big part of your life. But for you to sustain, and if you don't want to burn out or break relationships, if you want to be doing this 30 years from now, if you want to be doing this until the end of your life, you want the people that you love around you supporting you through that. So for new doulas, you don't have to do everything in 1 year. Just pace yourself. Check in with what's happening in your life in general. Maybe attending 5, 6 births a year is enough to drink from the well, and then you can do studies. And there may be times in your life that you can jump in and take 4 or 5 births a month and have a very full practice, but be respectful of your boundaries and of other desires that you may have outside of birth work as well. I feel, I think about birth all the time, but there are times that I prioritize my family, and that is also something that I'm modeling to these women that are becoming mothers, that when their cubs need them, they are there for their cubs. So I would say that's really important. Take care of your diet. Don't worry about gaining weight or losing weight, but eat as clean as you can, because birth work is hard on the body, and having a healthy diet will also sustain you for longevity in this work. Don't ever think like you know enough, because in birth the more you do, the less you know. You are always seeing something you had never seen before. You are always hearing something you had never heard before. I remember when I had about 50 births, and I felt, okay, so I've had home births, I've had VBACs, I've had, scheduled C-sections, I've had twins, I've had the accidental home birth, I've had same-sex couples, I've had single moms, so you feel like, oh, I got this, I've taken all the, Rebozo workshop, spinning babies workshop. I got this. I know how to turn a baby, and then from 50 to 100, it just seemed like nothing worked. It's like none of my tricks were working, and that is when experience and wisdom comes in, because you just humble yourself and feel like, I really need to, be prepared to be wrong, or be prepared not to know, or be prepared not to have any power or control over the final outcome of this experience. And yet, you can always make it better, in the sense that you can be supportive and loving, and even though you don't change outcome, you do change the experience of that woman.
Yeah, so good.
Yeah,
there was so much there.
That would be like my top of my head practical.
No, thing. Great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. And so then there's, the doulas who are maybe there too, where you get tired, and sometimes the inspiration isn't as strong as other times, it goes up and down. And what makes you, when you're going through that, come to the other side?
Yeah, it gets dark sometimes, I think that's really important to acknowledge that. Sometimes we take on too much, or it looks good in your calendar, but when they always start to go into labor back to back, and you have to teach other class, and it's your kid's birthday, and your partner's pissed off at you because you're never there, and it all comes together, and some seasons happen that way, it gets pretty dark. I have had my share of meltdowns, and it's really important, to, when you have a season like that, you do learn next time to pace yourself a little bit more. But I would say when you lose your inspiration, it's important to take a break. That's really all you need. You just need a little break. Maybe a couple months without being on call, some time with nature, some time in prayer or meditation, and physical activity, gardening, cooking, things that will really help you to reconnect. And you can still be in touch with birth, you can still go to meetings and take classes and read, but just take a break from being on call, from having that cell phone surgically attached to your
yeah, and like when the low battery comes on, it's like when you're not on call, it's like, oh, I gotta charge that soon. And when you're on call, it's like the worst message you can see.
And that's exactly right. I remember like not being on call one time and having my 4 kids and my husband with me, and going like, oh my God, I forgot my cell phone. And then looking around and being like, and so what? Like everybody's here. So who cares that I don't have my phone? I mean, it's such a sense of freedom that, people that are not on call for their lives don't understand what that means. So I would say, just ask for help. Don't be afraid to ask for your backup sisters to be there for you. Your clients will understand if you bring somebody else to a birth, or sometimes just knowing that somebody else is on call for you gives that, if I need an out, I have one. So I think that is important too. Always have backups in place, but especially when you're feeling burnout. And, and I feel like taking a break usually does it. You can also listen to Ina May's TED Talks. That can also ignite your fire.
Yeah. Or now DOULA-LA. You guys, everyone's going to have that forever. So.
Absolutely. Yes.
This is a selfless plug.
No, well-deserved plug.
Oh, great. Thank you. I I want to learn more about some of your activist work and community work and ways that you're doing. You have some exciting new news with the hospitals you're working with, and when I read your bio, it's like really exciting to talk about working in that system, right? And having the platform to create, right?
Yeah, absolutely. As you're saying that, I feel like I have two activist sides in me, and one is in North America and one is in South America. And they're different because, I am Brazilian. I had children in Brazil. I go back to Brazil to teach a couple times a year. And the environment of birth in Brazil is very different than the environment of birth here. So I feel like, when in Rome, do as the Romans do. My role here is a little more productive at the time, just because the system here is more prepared to welcome what doulas have to offer than the system in Brazil is prepared to welcome what doulas have to offer. Also, the system here, or the movement here, the birth movement here is more mature than the birth movement in Brazil. Okay. I feel that the movement in Brazil is still on the hurt, angry side. They've been cheated, they've been lied, they had birth taken away from them, they're pissed off. We had that in the end of 1960s, in the beginning of 1970s here. The good news, though, is that I do believe, because of social media and because of so many young people being interested in this, the movement in Brazil is going way faster. It's not going to take them 30 years to get to where we are, but it may take them another 5 or 10 years. So it's a little different. I feel like my role as an activist in Brazil is more soft, because I feel like there's a lot of very right and very smart, but very strong, loud voices. So I've been approaching it more in a more gentle, it's gonna be okay kind of presence. And here it's like, it's good, then let's push a little more. It's good, then let's push a little more. Let's see, how far that we can keep getting in. And, so here I've been working very, very intensely with a lot of amazing nurses. And I think that's really important for doulas to recognize, is what great allies nurses can be, and you don't need 5,000 nurses to be your ally. You need one. You need one nurse that, understands what you do, why you do, and that shares that same commitment to the woman. So it's not about the system, it's not about the doctor, it's not about the nurse, it's not about the doula, it's about the woman. And when both of you can connect to that, then you start to work through your differences. And I feel like, all the work that is been happening in my local hospital, it really is because of individual relationships that I started to make with these nurses, that, they would understand me. Like, we would go in the corridor and kind of even just almost rush it out in a friendly way of, why do you do it this way? Or why do you have to do it the other way? Why can't it be yeah, that's a good point. So in conversations like that, things start to move forward, until it starts to spread, and then it gets to management. And also, I feel like as doulas, we have to be smart. I don't think the hospital that I am involved with is being so open about all of these because they fell in love with nurses, doulas, or what we have to offer. But they know that that's what their consumers are looking for. And that's, if women are looking for, the ability to move around in labor, the ability to choose their position to give birth at, not having their babies taken away from them, delayed cord clamping, whatever they want, if they want to go to the hospital to have medical support. But, hospitals do know how to labor with sick women, which is very important. But the next step is hospitals need to know how to labor with the well woman, the healthy woman. And, they will understand that that's cheaper, that will be faster, and so that makes sense for them. And it's trendy, it's what the consumers want. So, a lot of times the diplomat role is understanding that, if I have to speak that language to make my point across, I'll speak that language to make my point across. I just want women to have options in the hospital. The other thing, though, that I found surprising, now I'm used to it, is how in big organizations or institutions, it's much slower to move forward. It requires patience. But yet, doulas are expert in patience. We sit for hours and hours and hours with a woman breathing in and out, and we are perfectly entertained by it.
Yes.
So, we're good for that. So yeah, that is, a little bit of my role as an activist. And there's other things too. I think it's very important to be involved with your local community and, what's happening in local events, and, support your local organizations, and support is financial support too. People need money to run campaigns and to, take their cause forward. So, I think, donating money, donating time. My role with Dona International is one way to be an activist. It's a big organization, and it's really important to give my time to something that will affect doulas, all over the globe. It's 35 different countries with donor approved doulas. So they need a voice. They need, a place that they can come for guidance or support or resources. Activism can look very different.
Yeah.
And that's really important for doulas to know. Maybe they're in a time in their lives that they can't do certain big projects, but they can do others. There is room for involvement everywhere. You can do anything to support your cause. So having all these active roles in my life allows me to be a little more calm when I am in a birth. And if I hear something that's not fair, or if I see something that is not ideal, I will try to address in my best scope of practice in the moment. But that also gives me a lot of material to know what needs to be worked. Where is the work that needs to be done? Is it with NICU babies, or is it with C-section moms, or what is it? Where is it there is a bigger need for change? And certain hospitals may be different than others, and so forth. So activism can look very different. So doulas everywhere, get involved.
Well, I love what you said about forming relationships, right? And how, it's so beautiful. It makes so much sense, like to have relationships with the nurses as people, right? And not resistance, or, not understanding that some of their behavior are just like tasks that they're accomplishing for their place of employment, right? Like sometimes we forget all of that, right? And it's just, there's resistance. But when you were talking about that, I was like, I'm gonna get all the doulas together and we're gonna make lunch for the nurses. And we're like, like invite all the nurses that aren't working to come, and we're gonna feed you, and like that's how I'm gonna form these relationships.
Yes. Well, that's exactly how this thing started. It was really a nurse and I planning a get together with, just a couple doulas and a couple nurses, so we could talk about working together better. And it was going to be a very casual, simple thing. And then it kept growing, so that's exactly right. And even relationship with doctors. Like doctors are incredible people too. They, not all of them, but not all of anybody is incredible people. But, when you find a doctor that is a good person, that loves what they do, you also understand when you start to meet them as a person, both as a nurse or as a doctor, anesthesiologist, nurse midwife, and any other professional that is not a doula, you really start to understand that it really depends on what kind of training they had.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of times what is so familiar to us, they never heard of. You know, like they doesn't even cross their minds. And when they start to ask you questions, that's when you realize how little they know. You know, like when obstetricians come to me and say, when a woman is GBS positive, how do they handle that on a home birth? That you just realize, like, wow, he really doesn't know anything about home birth. So, you know, you start to want to, you know, answer those questions more and more.
And vice versa too. I find, like, you know, by asking a lot of times you can speak your mind just by asking questions, right?
Yeah.
You know, so, you know, now of course I don't have a good example. But like,
is there a good reason that she can't walk around?
yeah.
You know, like, it's just like, you know, that's a question, but that really, you know, makes everybody like, you know, I have to give credit to Penny Simkin though. That's her tip, not mine.
Yeah, yeah. Good. I'm
But it's
glad
true.
you referenced it. I know I didn't make that up. I'm using it all the time.
But if you ask it like that, you know, is there a reason she cannot walk? You know, it implies that walking is normal. But that's something that may not cross their mind, you know, that a woman may want to walk.
Be careful of your tone, because if you say, is there a reason why she can't walk, then you're implying that you know that there isn't. Whereas if you say, is there a reason, like more, like really, like you don't, like, I would like to learn from you right now. If there is a reason why she can't walk around, it's different than, you know.
Absolutely. I think your tone, but you know, Tanya, I think like the tone comes from your intentions. You know, like when we go to a birth, I really do place myself in a place of service, and my intention is to soothe, you know, soothe that experience for the mother, for her partner, for her family, for her baby, but also for everybody else around us. You know, you can definitely make the day of that nurse a little better if you are helpful to her, and if you are kind to her, and if you know, involve her in the history of this family, and all of a sudden she's getting some of that oxytocin, you know, with all of us. So I feel like if the doula goes in with this intention of, you know, I'm going to be open to be kind and to listen to people and to make a new friend today, then your tone is going to reflect that. And sometimes, you know, we get a little pissed off or we get a little tired. Taking little breaks even, or, you know, just count your breaths for a little bit before you say something helps. But you're right, you know, it's when we start to see, if you're seeing them as a person, they're seeing you as a person. And, you know, one of the greatest fun that I've had in my career was also to see doctors change in their ways. You know, doctors that in the beginning of my career, I would see them as very conservative doctors. And then little by little, they would, you know, start to ask me questions like, is there anything else we could try? You know, and then it would work or it wouldn't work, but they could see the point of that. And, you know, almost 15 years later, these guys now are totally down, give birth on the floor, go in the bathroom. But, you know, that I would not even imagine. So that's also very exciting, is to see physicians, you know, adapting to where this movement is going. Yeah.
It is a really exciting time right now, you know,
Absolutely.
to be a doula and to be witnessing these changes. And I mean, it's also relevant, you know, we get to witness the change, like a new life is coming into the world, like the biggest change possible at any moment, you know. And then we're, like you said earlier, witnessing girls becoming mothers, you know. And then we're also in this time where, you know, as a community, we're really witnessing huge changes in the birth room, and it's us that's creating those. Like it's really beautiful, and I'm really inspired. So I just want to sort of start to close with kind of what's new for you, and making sure everybody knows what you're up to, where you're teaching, and all that good stuff. So do you want to share some of that information with us?
Sure. Well, I am here in Los Angeles at Beanie Birth doing lots of childbirth education and doula trainings, childbirth educator trainings. I'll be going to Brazil in May, and then again in November. So for my Brazilian sisters, I will be there. Me esperem, tô chegando. It's really wonderful to be there and see them and connect and hear the stories. So that's really what I have going on right
Yeah.
now. You know, not.
And I'm glad you mentioned Brazil again, because when you were talking about having the two different activists, one in North America and one in South America, I wanted to ask you if there's any particular organizations that we should know about. Like, I want to help out, you know, I want to help the Brazilian doulas with their movement and sort of soften that anger if I can. So where do I go to look at the birth movement that's happening in Brazil?
Well, I think Facebook would be a wonderful way. I think doulas are extremely well organized on Facebook. There is a few organizations in Brazil. One is called Reúna, REHUNA,
Okay.
and it's a movement. It's an organization that works on the humanization of childbirth. And in South America, that is the name of the movement. It's basically physiological birth,
Right.
and that's what they're advocating for. And yeah, so there is many different ways to get involved. I feel that we've had some Brazilian doulas come up here and stay here in Los Angeles and intern, but I'm kind of interested in taking American doulas there to have some fun with Brazilian women. Brazil is a fun country. Brazilian doulas really know how to throw a party. So it would be
okay, well, you make sure I'm on that list. I want to go to
Yes.
Brazil. Come
That
on.
was.
I got no shame. Take me to Brazil, okay?
Yeah, that's true.
Oh, this has been so much fun, Ana Paula. Thank you so much for being
Thank
here.
you.
So once again, it's beaniebirth.com, right? Is your website?
BeanieBirth.com. And, just for doulas out there, I just want to, a couple of things that are coming up that will be very exciting. If you are in the United States, is Lama's ICEA conference in September in Vegas, which is a nice place to go. But if you are a doula / childbirth educator, I feel like childbirth educators are almost like forgotten. That, to have a conference with the two biggest organizations that certify childbirth educators that is entirely focused on childbirth education, I believe it's going to be groundbreaking for us to really discuss, efficient, fun ways to inform people. I believe there is a total revival in childbirth education. I love to be part of that.
Yeah, I think that's sometimes the first place where women hear about doulas sometimes,
Exactly.
right? Like, so awesome.
Yeah.
I'm so glad
Their
you're bringing that
service.
up. Vegas in September?
Yeah. And then Dona International, we're going to have our online conference, which will be amazing, and that will be in August. So stay tuned for that.
Yeah.
Those are like my two plugs.
Great, cool. Thank you so much. And are you on Twitter? I can't remember.
I am on Twitter.
Yeah.
Beanie Birth. Yeah.
Beanie Birth at Beanie Birth on Twitter. Okay, well, we're going to shout out for you on social media. And everybody, make sure you go and check out her website to learn more about Ana Paula Markel. It's beaniebirth.com. I'm Tanya Malcolm. This has been wonderful. Thank you so much for being part of DOULA-LA. Happy World Doula Week.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.